Hi, hello, and welcome, or welcome back, I suppose. So, this is our July to December wrap up. This is not a full 2022 wrap up because we already did one earlier in the year, and I'm not keeping you here forever, mostly because I tried to do this kind of quick fire, but it never works out that way because it's me, and I'll get sidetracked at some point, as I am currently being sidetracked. So, we're just going through what we've read at the latter half of 2022, and we'll talk a little bit about my favourites and maybe my least favourites. Most of this is just going to be, I have read this. You've seen the reviews, you don't need me to talk about it. So, we got to 43 books by the end of June, and so we're starting at number 44, Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. 45, Clara and the Sun, Kazuo Ishiguro, definite favourite of mine, maybe even a top 10, you'll have to find out on Thursday. Vagabond by Bernard Cornwell, not a bad book, but not one of my favourites, because when I was writing down like the worst stuff I've read this year, I almost put it on, but it's like, it's not a bad book, I just didn't like it. The Doll Factory, Elizabeth McNeil, another favourite of mine. I thought it was so much fun. It wasn't quite what I expected, but I super enjoyed it. Like, if I'm gonna read historical fiction, I do like Victorian. The Secrets of Happiness by Lucy Diamond, another favourite. Who's surprised? It's fucking Lucy Diamond, and she's always my favourite. Never Let Me Go, Kazuo Ishiguro. Also, maybe you'll be seeing this on Thursday. Look, this book killed me, but that's fine. Worth it. Eat the Rich, we have multiple authors, I will put them on screen here. That was so much fun. Also, one of my coolest makeup looks. I loved it so much. One of the few graphic novels that isn't like, or like comic book volumes, I think it might be. Like, usually the more serious stuff usually gets to be in my favourites with that, but as in like a Junji Ito series. But still, absolutely phenomenal. Save Yourself, also multiple authors, I'll put them here. The Imperfect Art of Caring by Jessica Rinn, almost a favourite I think, but I think there was just something lacking, for me, personally. One Last Stop, Casey McQuiston. I'll talk about it on Thursday. It's not a fucking favourite though. Exciting Times by, if I remember rightly, Nisha, is how you say it? Nisha Dolan. It's still a book that I don't know how I feel about it. I'm trying to think back on it now, and I think I'm kind of at that point where it's just blended into, this was a book I've read this year, but, you know, sometimes that happens. People from My Neighborhood by Hiromi Kawakami. This was so much fun. Like, super bite-sized fiction, and it was all so good, the way it all connected, and the really weird fantastical elements to it. It was like so unlike something I've ever read before. It might have made it into a top 10, I think. Again, you'll see this on Thursday. I think I had about 30 books throughout the whole year, bear in mind, that I was just like, oh, yeah, this was a favourite, but it doesn't mean they're going to make it into the top 10. That's a hard decision to make. Where were we? Ah, yes, Callacane by Karen Boyer. Definitely a favourite. One that I hadn't really heard of, and I think we should. It's a book that should be in more conversations alongside Brave New World, 1984, those sorts of books. We just don't hear as much about it, and we absolutely should be. The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Ramos. I don't want to talk about it. Untold Night and Day by Bay Sewer. This was a lot of fun, not quite a favourite. It was very trippy and strange, but it was super cool. It Ends With Us, Colleen Hoover. Very mixed feelings about this to this day. I want to say I enjoyed it, because I think I did, but at the same time, I have a lot of issues with it, and it's just like, There's a reason that not just this book, but Colleen Hoover on the whole is very divisive. Watch my last video. It's not about that, but towards the end I sort of delve into it a little bit to hear my opinions on it. Also, coming soon in January, I think at the end of January, I think I planned this in, I will be talking about the sequel to this because my reservation came in at the library today. So yeah, I'll be reading the sequel, which is really interesting to me because objectively one of the worst parts about this book was the way it fucking ended. So let's find out how they continue that. The Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Eugenides. Really glad I read it. Not a favourite, but certainly very interesting and very entertaining. Is that alright to say that it was very entertaining given the book's contents? I found the narrator very interesting though. I really like the use of... oh, what's the fucking word? Unreliable narrators. The Devil's Advocate by Steve Kavanaugh, who I found out isn't American. I thought he was. Now, I need to see something here, because I don't know how, if it will still record when I am moving about. I also can't find my fucking mouse. Does it still record when I'm on something else? It looks like it is. Okay, anyway, let's leave that on the side. So, the joys of me having my laptop here now. What did you just do? Not what I wanted you to do. Thank you. If I click that open, is it just... no, okay, good, right. So yeah, because he writes in a really... where is it? There. Because he writes in a really American style, but... where are we? Yeah, he's Irish, or Northern Irish, maybe? Looks like he's Northern Irish, which really surprised me, because he writes in that very distinctive American style, which is great. You know, at the very least, the book that I read was set in the deep south in America, and he replicated that American style so well, and that really blew my mind. It's not a favourite, but finding that out really surprised me, because I think when I was talking about that book, I spoke about him like he was American, because I just assumed that he was, because of the way he writes. Next up, The Wolf and the Woodsman, Ava Reed. A lot of missed potential there. It should have been so much more. The Familiars by Stacey Hawes. That is a definite favourite from the year. It was so interesting, and obviously I love it because it's got that element of local history to it. I posted it on Instagram and Twitter today. I don't usually link my Instagrams just because it's like... maybe I should now that Twitter's dying, I guess. But I got one of her books today called The Foundling. Seems really good. It seems a bit like a kind of... oh, I can't remember the name for them. Where, like... babies... in, like, folklore and myth, where babies are different. Where, like, they're switched out. Like a changeling, is it? Yes, that's what I'm trying to think of. Changeling. It seems like it's almost playing with that kind of thoughts and stuff, because she does blend a bit of myth and reality really well, or at least she did in The Familiars, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how she does that in that book. Next up, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. One of those classics where I go, finally I can take that off my list, but I kind of had some issues with it, mostly just because it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, this book's old, and also you can't write dystopian fiction for everybody, because as I was saying in my review of that was for the Iron Maiden video, I was saying in my review for that, like, one person's idea of dystopia is another person's idea of utopia, so it's impossible to write for everybody, right? Then we had The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. Beautiful, camp, fantastic. Zero faults, apart from the fact that all the men are rubbish. That's not true, not all the men. The Persian's perfect. No faults for him. I fucking love that book, it's so stupid. It hits a lot of the joy points that Dracula hits for me. Also, my necklace has become very twisted. Can you come round, please? Thank you. Then we had Lord of the Flies by William Golding, another one of those classic books that I knew about but didn't super know well. Really enjoyed it, but it's not going to become a favourite. Maybe it would have done if I'd have read it when I was younger, because of the style of it. I did really think that that was fun, but just the way this man, like, this poor kid has the audacity to be what? Overweight, and that means he's got some sort of moral problem? Get fucked. Next up, The American Roommate Experiment by Elena Romas. Somehow that became a favourite of mine this year, and that really fucking annoys me, because how did she write The Spanish Love Deception and it was so dog shit, and then she wrote The American Roommate Experiment? Like, if you read those two books you would not know they're by the same author. And yes, it's still cheesy romance with a kind of fanfiction derivative feel to it, and by that I mean I don't know if it was fanfiction, but it still does fit the way that some books that are fanfiction-y sound, if that makes sense. But there's a lot of crossover in the way that the romance genre and general, like, fanfiction romance stuff sounds, just because it's similar tropes. There's a lot of crossover there, but just, like, you know, they're still falling into that a little bit, but still a lot of fun, and it still blows my mind that it wasn't the absolute dog shit that The Spanish Love Deception was. Maybe I thought it was so good because my expectations were in the bin. The Spoils of Anne Withen from the Book of Taliesin. I can't remember who the translators were for the book that I had, but that was just one poem from a larger book, but I still had it here. It was for the Iron Maiden video. I enjoyed it. That's as much as I can say about it, really. The Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. I've read that poem a million fucking times for study. I mean, I do enjoy it, but it's one of those that's just like, yeah, I've read this before. I've read this a lot. Where are we at? Oh, Murders in the Rue Morgue by Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah, fuck that. The ending of that. Piss. Constantine the Hellblazer, Volume 1, Going Down. Multiple authors, will put them here. Yeah, that was a book that should have been better. It just took too long to get to where it needed to be, but there were some positive elements. I really liked some of the design layout choices, which it's the I think it was called the Inferno Theatre or something like that. It's like an interactive theatre using Dante's Inferno. That was super cool. I really liked the way that worked. Then we had The No Show by Beth O'Leary. Definite favourite, the way that worked. Oh, loved that so much. That was so good. The twist, beautiful. Then we had The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary again. I think I did them as part of the same video. Yeah, that was her. That was her miss, at least for me. I mean, I love the rest of her books that I've read, but that one, not a fan. The romantic lead, the male romantic lead, seems like a Tory, and that, yeah, just no. Where are we? I've lost where I am. There. Night Terrors by Alice Vernon. Again, you might be seeing this on Thursday, because this was so fucking good. I enjoyed it so damn much. It's so much fun, which is weird to say about a book about the worst parts of sleep, but I enjoyed it so much. And I don't read a lot of non-fiction, so like, and I don't read a lot of non-fiction because it's generally quite dry, but this was genuinely entertaining. Then we had Not When the Wild Wind Blows, that's the song, When the Wind Blows by Raymond Briggs. I really enjoyed it, but it left me feeling very dark afterwards, and I guess I'm aware that I said the same thing with Never Let Me Go, but I don't know, it just hit different with that, and a lot of feelings came out afterwards, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't want to read this again, but it is a fucking brilliant book. Then we had The Duel by Joseph Conrad. If you saw my Iron Maiden video, you saw that I can't fucking remember any of this, so I can't offer you any feelings on it. Then we had Dracula by Bram Stoker. He's my favourite boy. I love him so much. Then The Midwich or Midwich Cuckoos by John Wyndham. This wasn't a favourite of mine, but I do remember really enjoying it. It's just, I don't know if there was missing something, or just sometimes I can enjoy a book, but it's not going to be one of my favourites. But The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco is a favourite, and mostly because I was kind of, I didn't know what I was expecting going into it, not particularly, but I did really enjoy it. I enjoyed it so much, and because I think it's one of those books that I was waiting a while to read, because I mentioned in the review that it's one that I had been introduced to back when I was at 6th form, but my English teacher at the time said maybe wait a little while, because it's one that's worth waiting when you have some, like, as silly as it sounds, reading experience under your belt, meaning like complex books, more like articles and things like that once you're at uni, and also just the sheer fucking size of it. It's been helped that I could read that after uni, and I am glad I waited, because I do think my brain is a lot more ready for a book like that, and yeah, it was well worth the wait. And then we had Dune by Frank Herbert, another one that's kind of well worth the wait, because it's just generally one of those books that I've seen for years. It is obviously a sci-fi classic, and I've always gone, I should read that at some point, I need to read that at some point, and I finally had an excuse, and at some point I'll do a full deep dive into it. I want to do a dedicated video to it. There's a few books like that. Then we had Time After Time by Carl Alexander, which was a really fucking weird book, but I loved it so much. It was so interesting, like, absolutely crackers plot, but it worked so well. It was so much fun. I just wish erections weren't spoken about so much. It's hard not to notice. Then we had The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner by Alan Sillitoe, just the short story, the titular short story, not the rest of the collection. That's just because it was part of the Iron Maiden video. I probably would have read the full collection had it just been for me reading it, and I really fucking enjoyed that. I do want, that is a definite favourite. I want to read the rest of that collection, and I want to read, why can I never remember this? I think it's Saturday Night, Sunday Morning. Yeah, because it's the double, like, it's the alliteration. So yeah, Saturday Night, Sunday Morning. God, I want to get my hands on that. And I'm pretty sure I have seen it at the library. Or I've seen one Alan Sillitoe book at the library, because I remember seeing it when I was seeing if anything was just there, rather than having to reserve it. And yeah, it might have been Saturday Night, Sunday Morning, or it was a different one, but either way, there is something in there. Then I will find it. I will get my little mitts on, my little paw-sized hands. Disgusting. Then we had The Red and the Black by Stendhal. I don't want to talk about it. It doesn't deserve my time. Then we had Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke. I loved this so fucking much. It was such a beautiful book. I need to find a new copy of 2001: A Space Odyssey, or see if it has been buried somewhere. Like, maybe it's just ended up in a box that I never put away, like, of stuff that I never put away properly when we moved here, because there are still some bits like that lying around. I hope so. I do hope so, because there are a few books that I've, like, just not got rid of that are in a book, that are in a box downstairs, so maybe that's in there somewhere. Either that or I did get rid of it, but I'm sure it's not a difficult book to find. And then we had Moonchild by Alistair Crowley. This suffered from a kind of The Duel thing. I just can't remember any of it, but unlike The Duel, I do really want to come back to this in the future. It seemed really interesting, but nothing was sticking. And the thing with The Duel was, I just thought it was kind of boring as well. That's one of the reasons that it wasn't sticking in my head. But with Moonchild, I was just suffering from, I've read so much, my brain feels like it's going to fall out. Please help me. So I just had to go, right, okay, we'll get to the end of this book. If I'm able to make notes, I will. If not, we will just mention that I couldn't. But I don't think that's the book's fault, but maybe it is. We'll find out eventually in the future. And as the last part of the Iron Maiden video project thingy-mabobby, we had Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, obviously a favourite. That book is a fucking phenomenal and beautiful and brilliant, and there's a reason that it's a fucking classic. I don't have to go into details about why that book is brilliant, obviously. And then we had Finding Love at the Christmas Market by Joe Thomas. Yes, that is a favourite. I did a review recently of that, so I don't think you really need me to go into much detail on it. And the last book of the year, at number 86, we had Gifts by Laura Barnett. Now, technically, there will be a couple more books that I read this year, but they'll be on the 2023 reading list because the reviews for them will be coming out in 2023. So it just helps me to keep track of things a bit easier. So, yeah. I will see you all very shortly, because I'm not doing much more about this video. This is just a wrap up. There will be a video on Thursday talking about my favourites and my least favourites, like a top 10, and I think it ended up actually rounding out as a bottom 10, but I'm not 100% sure about that. Hang on, where is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. A bottom 8, and that's covering the whole year, not just the second half. So I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, a wonderful whenever you are watching this. Take care of yourselves. Right.